Hi, it's Jacqueline Eckern with Eating Disorder Hope again. Thank you for attending our inaugural online Eating Disorder Hope Conference. We are very excited about our next presenter, who is Miss Kirsten Haglund, somebody that I admire very deeply. Kirsten served as Miss America in 2008 and is now the proud Community Relations Specialist for Timberline Knolls Residential Treatment Center. And as a television personality and commentator, Kirsten frequently appears on Fox, HLN, Fox Business Network, and HuffPost Live, And she comments on things like women's health issues, celebrity culture, social issues, women's empowerment, and the millennial generation. She is a dynamic and very interesting lady, and I think you're going to really enjoy this. So Kirsten will be presenting today on her eating disorder recovery and the founding of the Kirsten Haglund Foundation. And I would like to hand it over to you now, Kirsten, to discuss your eating disorder recovery journey.
Sure, thanks so much, Jacqueline, and thank you everyone who is here. I hope this has been a really exciting day for you guys, and I know that there have been a lot of really great presentations, so I am honored to be a part of this lineup, and also really excited about this being the inaugural conference. So congratulations to Eating Hope for all of your hard work in that area. So a lot of people in the eating disorder field have heard little bits of my story throughout the journey because I started to share for the first time in 2008 during my year as Miss America. And it's just so funny because I just want to start out by acknowledging the paradox there and some of the objections, because so many people look at me and say, well, how can you as Miss America be out there talking about eating disorders? And I want to acknowledge that first and foremost because I find it paradoxical as well, and in fact I never planned for that to be my life. I entered a competition when I was 17 years old, graduating from high school, after I'd completed my 2 years of intensive eating disorder therapy, and just decided to enter this local on a whim because I wanted some college scholarship, and I'd competed, or I'd performed on stages all my life as a ballet dancer and someone involved in the performing arts. So performing on a stage was no big deal to me, and never thought I would actually win, but I did. And then I had to go to the next level and compete at Miss Michigan at age 18, and also won completely unexpectedly, and then found myself at Miss America 6 months later, standing on that stage at 19 years old, just completely unexpectedly winning that as well. So all of that to say, I found myself in this very public position very, very quickly, and again, from the very beginning, really not even sure that I wanted it or wanted to do it or felt very comfortable in that role. But during my time, especially as Miss America, you get to travel all around the country during the year, from city to city, living out of suitcases every day in another city, and you get this incredible opportunity to talk about an issue. Every girl chooses a platform. Talk about an issue that you care about, advocate for it, be an activist, travel around the country on a speaking tour. And I thought, obviously an eating disorder has touched my life, my family, my community so deeply, and I have the opportunity to speak to young girls, young women, like the target audience for who needs to hear the message about positive body image and the, being imperfectly, perfectly imperfect, and that it's okay to be vulnerable and to share what's on your heart and challenges you faced in your life, and offer people a story of hope. Like, I had an opportunity to talk to the most vulnerable audience, and so I just really tried to embrace what I'd been given in that year and chose as my platform to raise awareness of eating disorders, and that's kind of how that all started. That's when I first started to share my story, and I made sure that I shared it in a responsible way. That was always really, really important to me. I had a lot of mentors early on in coming into the eating disorder world. Kathleen McDonald, who now works very closely with the Eating Disorders Coalition, is an incredible role model of faith to me. Also Jenny Schaefer, and just really made sure that when I started to share my story that I did so responsibly. So that's kind of how this whole journey for me started in sharing, and that was about almost 10 years ago now, which is crazy to think about, and I feel so honored to have been able to do this work for the last 10 years. But that's kind of where it all began. And since then, that's why I say a lot of people have heard bits and pieces of my story, and there's some of it out on the internet. But in a nutshell, if you can put these things in a nutshell because they're so complex, I'll just kind of walk through some of the most basic, parts of my journey and my turning point and what recovery looked like for me and where I am now. So I started struggling with eating disorder behaviors first at around 12 years old. But of course, NEDA, the National Eating Disorders Association, has a really great saying that genetics load the gun and environment pulls the trigger, right? So it's not just like I started at 12 years old. We have a history of some mental health issues in my family. And then growing up, I had very type A, very perfectionistic, very high achiever, but also very, very self-critical, very much a people pleaser, and just really based from a very young age a lot of my sense of self-worth on what other people thought of me and whether or not I was achieving and accomplishing and the best at school and in dance and in every environment I was. Being the best was very, very important to me, and I was very, very self-critical. So from a very young age too, I started dancing. So I was involved in the ballet world from very, very early on, and I loved it, of course. I mean, music and dance were my very first loves, and I felt so alive dancing. And so it quickly became my life's passion, and that was the goal for my career. My profession was I wanted to be a professional ballerina. So I got on the track to do that. At 9 years old, I started going to an all-ballet school, training very intensively every single day. And then at 12, went away for my first summer to study at an 8-week ballet program away from home. And that summer also, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so our formerly very happy, normal life, family growing up, started to just really become very chaotic, very uncertain. Obviously my mother's health and her future was very uncertain. And then I went off to this ballet program, and I went from being, a big fish in a small pond, being the best at my ballet studio in Michigan, to being with, going to the big leagues, being a very small fish in a huge pond, and really coming face to face with girls who, were very, very good and very, very intensely training. And I got very, very scared that I wasn't going to be able to be a professional dancer, that maybe my skill level wasn't there, and just really, really being very doubting of myself. And then, of course, you put in conjunction with all of that at 12, your body is changing and you're coming into puberty and adolescence and your hormones are raging and all of these things just create a perfect storm of factors. And I just, in the midst of all of the chaos and the self-doubt and the plummeting self-esteem, because of comparing myself to other girls with their talent, but also their body shape and size, I had to find a way to cope, and I had to find a way to focus and keep myself sane. And I turned to a diet. And that was all it was at first. It was just, well, maybe I can lose 5 pounds off my thighs because I hated my legs, right? I would go into the studio in a leotard and tights every day, and I just absolutely hated my legs. So I thought, well, if I can lose 5 pounds off my legs, then I'll be happy. But as many of us know who struggled with an eating disorder, it never is enough. And you lose that first little bit and you feel good and you get compliments and there's so much positive reinforcement that you just keep going. And that's exactly what happened to me. And I just kept cycling downward further and further into restriction and over-exercise. And what I try to emphasize so much when I have the opportunity to speak to women and men too, but I have a special heart for women, is that I think that there is this misconception for people who are looking at eating disorders from the outside that girls who are thin and beautiful are happy, and that if you lose weight, you'll be happy, and that fulfillment comes from being beautiful, desirable, attractive, thin, etc. But when you're struggling with an eating disorder, the goalposts keep moving, and it never leads to happiness. In fact, it just makes you more depressed and have more despair, which causes you to feel worse about yourself, which causes you to restrict or binge and purge more. And it's this horrible cycle that you just get further and further down into, and without treatment, you can't get out of by yourself. And that is one thing, too, I just think people need to hear, is that eating disorders are not a phase. They're not something that you can just snap out of or grow out of, or that time changes. It doesn't. It really is a serious mental health issue that needs really good treatment. The other thing that I want to emphasize about my story and my journey is that, yeah, a lot of it at the beginning had to do with wanting to be a thin ballerina, but it's really that it was just a manifestation of a deeper underlying emotional issue. I wanted to be valued. I wanted to be worthy. I wanted to be loved and cherished. And, when so many other things are going around you that are very chaotic and, very destructive, especially in your family life, you just want to be seen and you want to be found significant and valuable. And that's what I was really searching after. But the eating disorder never gave it to me. It's a huge liar. So fast forward 3 years later, when I was about 15, my parents finally stepped in and got me into treatment. And of course, I was initially extremely resistant. I didn't want to go at all. They got me into outpatient treatment because that was really the only thing that they knew about at that time in the Metro Detroit area where I grew up, and started seeing a primary care physician, a nutritionist, and obviously a psychologist in order to get on this recovery journey. And it was excruciatingly hard. I would say for about the first 6 months, I was in total denial that I needed any help, that I had any problem, that I wanted to get better, and I thought I would just kind of try to gain enough weight in order to get my period back so that I could fool my doctors and say that I was okay, and then they would stop harping on me, and I could fool them. I couldn't fool them. And it was about 6 months into my outpatient treatment that I kind of had a really come to Jesus moment, both figuratively and literally. When I was over-exercising on a treadmill and I almost passed out, and I suddenly felt very, very out of control of my body for the first time in really my life, because I was a dancer. I knew every single muscle of my body. I knew every single feeling. I knew what every single little joint pain or muscle twinge felt. I always had a very, very strong mind-body connection. But in that moment, I felt completely out of control of my body. And that was when I realized that people actually do die from eating disorders. Because I'd heard that, and my doctors had told me that, and I'd read it, but I'd never actually really believed it. And it was in that moment that just all of these emotions kept flooding up from inside of me, and just desires that I had that I didn't even realize that I'd had, that I wanted to, I wanted to grow up, and I wanted to eat birthday cake again, and I wanted to get married, and I wanted to have kids, and I wanted to travel, and I wanted to see the world, and I wanted to learn a new language, and I want, just all of these things that I wanted to do in my life, and realized that being enslaved to the eating disorder and just constantly being on the track that it had laid out for me for the rest of my life, I wouldn't be able to do any of those things that I really dreamed of and that I really wanted to be more than just someone with an eating disorder for the rest of my life. So that was the real turning point for me. To say that just recovery became very easy from there would be a total lie. It obviously didn't. It was 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. It was so, so hard and not easy. And there was a lot of pain and a lot of struggle between me and my family, and so many relationships that were just very, very hurt and needed mending. But after 2 years of working with my outpatient treatment team, I was at a place where I was able to be not only weight restored and get a lot of my bone density back, and be following my regular meal plan and staying on it and eating a diversity of foods and cooking for myself and all those wonderful things, which now I absolutely love cooking, like absolutely love it. But also really had the tools in my tool belt, so to speak, emotionally, so that when I faced a challenge or faced a trial or everything in life became chaotic again like it did when I was young, that I knew how to handle my emotions. I knew how to feel them and honor them. I came to understand, and I'm still coming to understand, that perfection is an impossibility, and that you're never going to please everyone. And that was huge for me, because I lived so much of the first 18 years of my life just trying to please everyone, and I think I really learned that lesson well as Miss America, because you've got millions of people then who are looking at you and have an opinion about you, what you look like, what you wear, what you say, what you do, I mean, everything, and you just really realize very quickly that you cannot please 330 million people in this country, much less your fans in Singapore and Thailand and the Czech Republic, and you just can't. So, that was those were some of the deep underlying emotional roots of what I struggled with, and really felt that I had a really, really wonderful skill set to move on and face those things after those 2 really hard years of work. So that is kind of the journey, like I said, in a nutshell. And I just, before we move on to the next part of our conversation and your next question, I just want to emphasize to whoever might be listening who is going through this, or a family member of someone who is struggling, that every story is so different and no one's journey looks the same. So I'm just sharing this as an effort to be vulnerable and open about what I went through and the circumstances of my journey, but in no way do I want anyone to compare their struggle or their timeline or their feelings or their pivot moment to mine, because every single one of us has a very, very different story, because each of our lives are different and circumstances are different, and that's okay. That's okay, that's valid, and that's the reality. So no one's story is ever going to look the same, and to just kind of embrace and accept wherever you are in the journey is really, really important.
Wow, very, very interesting story. And we had some questions while you were talking. One was, how difficult was it to leave ballet, and how did you come to the decision that you didn't want to go back?
Yeah, it was really, really hard. And, I still miss ballet. I mean, it was my first love. I mean, I still love it. And but it's not painful for me anymore. I go to the ballet all the time, and I enjoy it. I watch ballet videos like people watch cat videos. I mean, I could just spend hours watching ballet videos, and I love it because it's so beautiful. And I'm so thankful for the time that I had doing it when I was healthy. I got to that point where I decided I had to leave when I just realized I could not, from a very practical perspective, I could not weight restore and be in a leotard and tights every day. I just couldn't. It's worse than a bikini. Leotard and tights are worse than a bikini. It's just, and ballet is such a, intense art form and discipline, and you are, forced to go into the studio every day and look at a mirror and always examine your technique and your body and every muscle group, and you have to be that attentive to those very physical things, and I just couldn't be in both places at once. I just couldn't do it, and so I had to remove myself. And I didn't stop completely. I scaled way back. I didn't do the performing company, and then I scaled back the number of times I was going per week, and then I kind of shifted my love of the arts from ballet to musical theater and started getting more involved in the musicals in my school and my voice training, and so still channeling that part of me that loved performance and loved the arts, but in a way that was healthier and in an environment where the body ideal was much healthier. And so that really, really helped. And it was also very empowering to learn and to understand that I could do more than ballet. Because I think for a long time I felt like that was my only option, my only career option, the only thing that I was good at. And it really took the eating disorder taking a real hold on my life for me to pull out of ballet and to realize that I was good at other things, which was hugely empowering to me, and created a lot of hope for me that I could have a life outside of ballet and outside of my eating disorder. So that was how I made that decision. And of course, I think at first I was really worried about disappointing my ballet teacher, who I loved, admired, and respected so much, and disappointing people around me. But I had a really incredible support team. My parents are amazing, and my family was so supportive of me. And even my friends in ballet were very supportive of me because they loved me and they were concerned for me. And I found a new group of friends in theater and some of these other things that I was doing. So the support system was really, really important. And I also learned then that if you have toxic friends in your life or toxic people in your life, it's very, very hard to manage a stable and healthy recovery with them continuing to be in your life.
I agree. I agree. And so it was pretty courageous of you to forge a new identity aside from the ballet, and that's a lot of, especially at such a young age. I know a lot of people that I've dealt with in my own practice that have been in ballet or other sports. It was very difficult. And not everyone has to give it up. It just, it's a very unique choice. But long distance running, wrestling.
Yeah.
I think you touched on a really good point, though, which is just that fundamentally our sense of worth and value is so much more than any achievement out there. And your ability to do that was impressive, to transition to looking deeper and not relying on those things to feel valued.
Yeah, and it's one thing that is so funny because the things that have happened in my life have just been so strange. I mean, I never expected to be doing what I'm doing now or had happened what has happened to me, but it's something that I said to a friend once, and she put this quote in her book, and then I read it. I'm like, oh my, okay. And when I looked at it on page, it looked much more intense than I meant it. But I said to her, I never felt uglier than on the day that I won Miss America. And that is because all of a sudden you go from just being you to your family and friends, right, to being held up on this pedestal as this ideal for the entire country. And I mean, everyone's going to have a comment about what you look and everything, and so many people are so critical of you. So this time when you're being elevated to this position as this ideal and, the most beautiful whatever, the most accomplished whatever, which any girl on that stage could have been Miss America. They were all so talented and accomplished. But, you're elevated to this position and everyone thinks that you're the best of the best, but this criticism being launched at you makes you feel like you're awful, like you're totally not worth it, and it's just something that, I just wish that more people would know. It doesn't matter if you've been Miss America, you've modeled for Calvin Klein, you're a famous actress, you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, everyone's got issues, and everyone has insecurities and doubts. And even people that you think have got it all together and have everything that they could possibly want, they still have major, major struggles. And that means that even in your wildest dreams, the things that you wish for yourself, if you got them, if you're not happy and satisfied with yourself on the inside, those things are not going to make you happy. Just like for me, I was killing myself in order to be a professional ballerina, and so of course that wasn't going to make me happy. Right? And so to forge an identity outside of any of those accomplishments which you think are going to make you happy and fulfilled is so important, because there's no emptier feeling than when you do finally achieve your goal, whether it's a weight goal or a career goal or an educational goal, and you realize that it doesn't fulfill your heart and your spirit. There's nothing worse than that. And so we have to be proactive in saying, this is what I want, this is what I want to go after, but ultimately it doesn't fulfill.
I agree. So another question that we've had is, what would you say to parents with young women interested in entering beauty pageants?
This is such a hard question for me because I don't have a daughter, but one day I would like one. And I would probably not encourage her to compete in a pageant because I understand that there are genetic predispositions, and I don't want my daughter to struggle in the way that I did. And I see a lot of destruction happen in families and with young girls who get involved in pageantry at a very young age. I see it, I've seen it. And so it's not something that I actively encourage women to do. Especially if girls come to me and they've had a history of body image issues or an eating disorder and they say they're thinking about competing in a pageant, I say probably not a good idea. Unless you are super, super, super solid in your recovery, right? I don't encourage it. It's a really, really can be a very, very hard environment. But that being said, just like there are women that can do ballet and not be sick, there are girls that can do pageants and not get sick and not take it to an extreme. So it really just depends on the person and where they're at. So when someone is coming to me, the first thing I do is ask about their history of body image and confidence and dieting and their thoughts and feelings about themselves and why they want to compete, whether it's just to get a crown and to get validation or whether it's for scholarship and community service and personal development. The motivation reveals a lot about whether or not someone's going to be able to do it and do it healthfully. So that's what I always try to identify when people come to me and ask me personally. But also I just want to emphasize too that as much as I think that, pageants for little girls can be really, really destructive, the way that social media is now and the younger and younger ages at which girls are getting Instagram accounts and Facebook and all this stuff, it's just like that, because what kiddie pageants did was just, you put girls up on a stage and compare them to one another, and they're competing at, for for a prize and a trophy to be the most beautiful at age, what, 5 or 6, and how ridiculous that is. But essentially, girls are doing the same thing on Instagram, and that's not something we had even 10 years ago. So, not saying that that means young girls can do pageants or should, but just means that we need to be aware as a society that social media accomplishes a very, very similar goal. And we need to just be really, really careful, especially parents. You can tell your daughter she can't compete in a pageant, but if she's on Instagram posting half-naked pictures of herself or in very sexual poses, or constantly glued to the phone seeing how many likes and shares she got, it can be a very, very similar mind game.
Yeah, that's a really important topic. So Time Magazine just had a recent article about the increase in depression in adolescents and the correlation to social media. And they had some tips of suggestions for parents with kids of what to do. And one of the things was to not allow your preteen or teen to bring their phone to bed or into their bedroom at night. What do you think about that tip?
Yeah, I mean, that would be hard for me. Personally, I mean, it is, because I don't look at social media last thing before I go to bed, but I'll read like news articles or watch a YouTube video, catch up on the latest late night thing or news article, because I do so much news, and so I like to know constantly what's going on. But for a couple of reasons, I think that's a really good idea for young people. One, because especially for young girls, there's just so many predators on the internet that are going after young girls, and usually at late night, late hours of the night, and it can be extremely dangerous. And so if there's not parent supervision there on social media, it could just be a very, very dangerous environment for predatory sexual assault, to be honest, online. Also, there's just the fact that the light from the phone actually is not healthy for you, like at night, late at night, and that's why actually Apple recently did that thing where they put the phone into night shift, where it's more yellow colors coming out of the phone, yellow light rather than blue light, which is actually stimulates the fight or flight mechanism in the brain and increases cortisol. So they have tried to do some of that to make it a little more healthy, but it's not good for your eyes and for your brain to be looking at a screen very close to when you're going to bed. You actually have more restful sleep when you don't. But then also there's just the fact that if you're scrolling through your Facebook or Instagram feed comparing yourself to others right before you go to sleep, it's not going to produce restful sleep. I mean, I think we can all agree with that. That's just basic common sense. So I think it's a really, really good rule if you can enforce it.
Yeah, I agree. I ran it past my 13-year-old son, and it was not very well received. So I will think about your comments on that. So I think the next thing would be, one of the cool, there's so many cool things in your story and about you, but the fact that you started your foundation and now help others find recovery and treatment when they can't afford it. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So after my year as Miss America was over, I was 20 years old and wanted to continue the work that I was doing as Miss America, because it was just so wonderfully fulfilling to me to be able to share and to help people feel like they could share their stories and help them to find resources and education and help them to feel empowered in their own journey. And I just love that so much. It gave me so much meaning that I wanted to continue that work in some way. And I knew that professionally and career-wise I wanted to move on from that. I think it's really important for someone who has survived an eating disorder to have an identity outside of just sharing their story. I think it's really important, and I've tried to make that a priority in my life. But I wanted to continue the work in some way, and so I kind of looked at the need in the field. And there are amazing organizations like ED Hope that are doing awareness and education and prevention, and there's other doing legislation, advocacy. I mean, there's so many great organizations doing so much work, and we want to just support that. But just one thing that I continually saw over and over again was families just being so frustrated with the process of getting good care, getting their insurance to cover it, then affording treatment, and just all these hoops that they had to jump through and negotiating with their insurance companies, and just the financial stress on top of all of the physical or psychological, emotional stress of trying to get your loved one into treatment or trying to get yourself in. It's just that just compounds the struggle so much. And I thought, how can I help? And I thought, well, if I have a name that, you know, can draw people, donors, you know, people into events, whatever. If I have a name that can get people in the door, shoot, let's use it. You know? And so I said, all right, I'm going to start a nonprofit. And I was 20 years old, and it was, you know, and looking back, I'm like, wow, that was ambitious, because there was just so much I didn't know. But like I said, I had an amazing family. They're like, yeah, we want to do this with you, and we want to help you. And they helped me assemble a board. You know, we got our nonprofit paperwork in, and it got approved very quickly, which was amazing. We had an incredible legal team that helped set up our bylaws and just make everything, you know, really solid and legit. And said, all right, we're going to raise funds to help families bridge that gap between what insurance will cover and they can't pay for, or help meet their deductible, you know, wherever they're at in their financial situation. We want to try to be that second hand, you know, that hand up, and help their loved one get a second chance at life and recovery. So we started raising funds, you know, through events, through donor relationships, through partnerships with other treatment centers, or, you know, with fashion organizations. We had Paige Denham do a jean for us one year that was an incredible fundraiser. You know, just pursuing partnerships with stakeholders in this field to try to raise money for care. And it's been a really, really neat and interesting journey. You know, we've had a lot of transitions over the last several years, but I tell you, every single year we have a gala, and we have one of our scholarship recipients, you know, someone who's received a treatment grant, come and speak. And their stories are just really, really emotional. I mean, we've walked with so many women now from a point where they were at death's door through the point where they have a job and they have a family, and, you know, they're supporting themselves and they're pursuing their dreams, and they've beaten this disease. And it's just, I mean, you just can't believe it. You can't believe you're honored enough to be a part of that journey with people. And so, you know, we have a clinical advisory board. We have an application process. You know, I mean, it's all this stuff that, you know, goes along with being a nonprofit. And we support people at all levels of care now. We originally started out trying to just do residential treatment, but we realized we could help more people by covering a wide variety of treatments. So we do everything from online, you know, helping pay for online support programs and online treatment, to outpatient, inpatient, PHP, residential, kind of the whole gamut. And we really just take each person and each application as it comes through and really work on a case-by-case basis. But of course, we have a really long waiting list, and you know, we wish we could help absolutely everyone who applies to us. Unfortunately, we can't, because we don't have unlimited resources. But we try the very best that we can to help as many people as we can. And it has been a real joy, but it also gets really emotional, because, you know, you can't help everyone, and it's just so hard, which is why if anyone wants to help us, help support, you know, we have no overhead costs. Everyone's volunteer who works for us, so it's not like I'm getting a big salary out of this. I don't want to get paid for it one bit. I want every single dime to go to these girls who write to us. So that's a little window into what we've been doing, and it's been a real, real blessing and honor to be able to do it. Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry about that.
Here we go.
It's so admirable, because even just taking on all the nuances of the board, and, you know, it's in the paperwork, it can just, most people would shut down, but you forged through that, and now so many others are benefiting from that. I know I would like to know more about how to donate specifically, and I'm sure our audience would like to know more too. What can you tell us specifically that we can do to help support scholarships?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for asking. You can go onto our website. It's KirstenHaglundFoundation.org. You can see my cat's tail in the background if you're wondering what that is. So you can go to KirstenHaglundFoundation.org, and right there on the front page there's a tab that says Donate, and you can make your donation. And of course, I know everyone says this is involved in a nonprofit, but really any amount of money does help. Any amount that you can give is helpful. And there's a spot in there when you make your donation, you can make it in memory of someone if there's a loved one that you have that you want to support or remember. And also, follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter. We post all kinds of inspirational articles and research and things like that, as well as our Instagram page. We've always got stuff up on our latest events and links to those things that we're doing out in the community. So Kirsten Haglund Foundation.org is the website, and of course I know that it's getting to be toward the end of the year and it's around the holidays, and a lot of people are choosing where to give, for the next year. And like I said, I just want anyone out there to know who may be considering giving that these scholarships, these treatment grants, are really transform people's lives. Elsa.
That's fun. Not a problem. I've got animals all over here doing stuff too. So
wait, no. Elsa's going to be a part of the pitch.
Elsa.
Because this is the joy of my life, and her name's Elsa. She's my dog. As you can see, I'm a huge animal lover, like most eating disorder survivors end up being. But she's my joy. But these treatment grants that we're able to award at whatever level of care, I will tell you, because we know the families, and I see these women, and they're rock stars, and treatment saves lives. I mean, it really, really does. And sometimes it can be hard to see that when we're in the thick of the recovery process, supporting someone. You feel like it'll never get better or whatever. But with adequate care and with good treatment, people's lives transform, and they really do change, and it really does work. So I just want people to know that, if you're giving, that those dollars really do go to saving people's lives.
That was wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for everything you do to help eating disorder sufferers. We're grateful for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for everything you do at ED Hope, because I know it's just such a wonderful beacon of hope in a very dark world for so many people. And I just thank you, too, for what you're doing and how you support. And I love being able to contribute in any way I can to the work that you're doing. So thank you for having me as well.
Oh, thanks, Kirsten. All right. Well, we appreciate your time. Hope you have a lovely evening.
Thank you so much, you guys, too, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.